That morning was actually not a normal morning for us because I would normally have headed out to work already. We had to meet the vice principal at the elementary school that day, so I was going into work later. I got up and went out, came out into the living area here. Matthew was in the kitchen. He was being a big boy. He was 5 years old, and he had decided he was going to make breakfast. So I thought I'd just leave him be, and I was going to go get my newspaper. Also, our next door neighbors were on vacation, and we were picking up their paper from their driveway. As I got to the window, I looked and I saw somebody out there, and I decided, well, since I have to go next door to get their paper, I'm going to wait until that person's not there because I don't want anybody to see that nobody's at the next door house, especially since I didn't recognize who it was. Went back, gave it about 10-15 minutes, walked back over and didn't see the person. Started out the front door, and as I got past the garage out there, I realized that they had moved over into the neighbor's driveway and they were standing there. So I thought to myself, okay, we'll just get our paper and we'll come back and get theirs later. I wanted them to make sure, I kind of wanted to let them know that I did see them. So I said good morning as I picked up the paper. And I turned around and started back up the driveway, and I heard footsteps behind me. And I turned around and I got shot. My first thought at that point was somebody's breaking into my house. My kid and my wife were in there. So I started crawling back to the house. And I started screaming for them. And Matthew came around the corner. When I saw him, I was relieved. I knew he was okay.
I remember I was in kindergarten at the time, and I woke up, and it was one of those special days because my dad was home. And usually my dad has already left for work by the time that I'm up and I'm getting ready to go to school. And I just remember I was making breakfast, and I made myself a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. And I remember I'm just so focused on that bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. And, I remembered hearing something, and I can only explain it as kind of like, I guess it's one of those noises that you just kind of hear as a kid, but you know it's not really real, but you don't really know that because you're like 5. And for me, it was like a click. And for some reason, like as a little 5-year-old, I translated that click into the cockback of a gun, which made no sense at all whatsoever. But I was scared, and I remembered my dad went out to go get the paper. My mom was in the shower. I was just going to go see my dad just so he could kind of, reassure me, let me know it's all okay, all that stuff. So I go towards the front door, and I remembered seeing the floor and just seeing it all covered with the glass. The door was absolutely shattered. And I remember just looking out through the frame of where the window was, and I just remember it being so dark. Everything just kind of goes blank from there.
And I remember Matthew coming in to me and told me that the front door was broken and that Daddy needed help. And I'm in the shower, and I was like, well, go open the garage door. I mean, the front door's broken, go open the garage door. And then he comes back and goes, no, Daddy really needs some help. And I still had shampoo in my hair. I got that mostly rinsed out, I think, threw on my hair in a towel and wrapped a towel around me and went out. And there was glass all over the foyer. And Paul's yelling at me telling me to call 911. So I'm calling 911, and Matthew's standing next to me. He was 5 at the time. And she was asking me questions, and I was asking him questions that she was relaying to me so that I could answer them for her. And I stayed on the phone with 911, and then the police and the ambulance came. And I remember going and putting my bathrobe on and then giving my bath towel to Paul so he could put something on his face for the bleeding. I had to leave the house, with the policewoman that, allowed me to get dressed and everything. And I couldn't put the milk away or anything. Everything just had to stay as it was. And you can see where a bullet hit the brick because there's that grayish residue around there. And there's a hole in the siding.
The person who pulled the trigger was determined to be of not sound mind. They had a history of mental disease. It's documented, that they had mental illness. And it took the jury 5 minutes before the jury came back and ruled her not fit for trial. She was put in a facility, treated for her mental illness, put on medication, and they've stabilized her. Every year we have a hearing to review the situation. This particular person worked with me about 9 years prior to this incident. I had not seen nor had any contact with this person for about 6 years. So we are talking about just out of the blue, something somewhere sat in her mind, and she decided that I was going to be the target.
The detective had said that the lady had a list of people, and Paul happened to be the first name on the list, and there was another one of Paul's co-workers, and they didn't really go into detail about anybody else, but we know those were the top two. I was asked to sit in a detective's car to be questioned, and some guy, another detective I guess, they had to have like two of them in there, jumped in the back seat. And they just asked me various questions, things like, was Paul having an affair? Was I having an affair? Just all kinds of questions I guess you ask just to see if there's some kind of hint of, impropriety or something, or one of us has a hit out on the other person or something, I don't know. I remember Matthew was riding his bicycle up around the driveway, and I came inside, and apparently he got a piece of glass like stuck in his sneaker because I found it in the carpet, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a piece of glass. And so I went outside, and it must have swept some of the glass into the grass. And so I'm leaning in the grass picking up glass, and my neighbor Hector was over there, and he's like, Theresa, what are you doing? And he comes over, and he's kneeling in the grass helping me find it. And I remember finding a piece of glass that was red with blood. And Hector was so nice, he just gave me a hug. And I was just picking up pieces of glass so that no one would get cut on them, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Just finding blood-stained glass in your yard, it was so hard. And then you just relive it, just relive it sometimes.